Welcome to Soul Connections, a podcast about enchanting relationships with the human, more than human, and divine. I'm Emily, an astrologer, mystic, and herbalist.
I'm Aryn, an astrologer, writer, and creator.
And I'm Dani, a musician, astro minister, and organizer. We're your hosts. Join us for illuminating conversations with radiant guests and Astro Church sermons that weave astrology, mythology, and tarot.
Journey with us as we make meaning out of mystery through archetypes, patterns, and storytelling.
Welcome to another episode of Soul Connections. I'm Emily.
I'm Aryn.
And I'm Dani.
We have another interview segment for you today. This month, we are so excited to welcome our special guest. She is just such a beloved being in the spiritual Milwaukee community. I feel like so many people know her business, her offerings, and it's just a gift to have her on the podcast today. So without further ado, I'm excited to introduce and welcome B Barrales. B is a mom, proud Chicana, queer, professional Bruja, and community spiritual healer. She is the owner of Tres Ojos, a Milwaukee witch shop, and co-host of What the Hex, an inclusive witches market. Her main areas of focus are crystal healing jewelry, spelled potions, and energy work. As a clairvoyant channel, she uses her gifts in readings, rituals, and workshops. Welcome, B, to Soul Connections.
Yay.
So, B, to get us started, we'd love to have you share what is your sun, moon, and rising sign?
Absolutely. Well, thank you all so much for having me. I am very excited to be here to chat with y'all. Okay, so my big three are I am a Capricorn sun, an Aries moon, and a Scorpio rising. Just quite a mix.
A lovely mix as we are still in this Capricorn full moon phase right now. That's awesome, B. So to get us started, we always ask a very important question for Soul Connections. B, what lights you up?
Such a big, broad question. And that's like the feeling that I get when you ask that question. So I would say like the most big thing that comes to mind is definitely community connection and like any sort of like healing interactions. Like anything that's like, oh, that was like a really nice interaction. Like that feeling of like everything connecting and like having that moment of like, this was meant to be, this was meant to happen is my big general answer to that question.
I love that. I'm feeling that right now. Like, I just feel like you named that energy so beautifully. And yeah, that connectedness that we have and feeling right place, right time. And wow, thank you for naming it in such a beautiful way. So to kind of, hone in maybe, yes, what lights you up? Such a broad question. And we just like to see where that takes us. So B, I know you are a professional Bruja and you are a mystical, magical business owner, an artist and creative. So can you tell our listeners who may not be familiar, but what does it mean to be a Bruja? And can you describe like what your practice of Brujeria is?
Yeah, absolutely. So bruja is just the Spanish word for witch. So I love using that term to really acknowledge that a lot of my practice, witchcraft, everything is all rooted in my culture. So I am Mexican. So when I say I am Chicana, that means I was born in America, but my parents are Mexican. And so I love to acknowledge my culture in everything that I do. And like, that is absolutely like what sparked a lot of my knowledge in most of the things that I do today, I just do a very like modern twist to everything. So I love using that term to kind of open the conversation of like, a lot of times people are like, what does that mean? Or it's like, it sounds like a more spooky witch to some people sometimes. So they're like, I don't know if that's more like dark coded or what is that? Which it can be. So I am the owner of Tres Ojos, which is a business that I co-own with my wife that we just celebrated 6 years this summer, which is crazy. Yeah. And so we have like evolved over time. And now we have this lovely little wood shop that we have here that I pour my heart and soul into every single day. And I am very blessed to be able to have a physical location to be able to do these community connections.
Yay, love to hear that. So, and we definitely will be diving into your business, into the deeper story behind that. And so I just wanted to ask, when we connected before this interview, you were kind of talking about like the cultural significations, even within your own, like within the Mexican community of like Bruja, maybe how that can be even like a polarizing word. Would you maybe be able to talk a little bit more about that? What like your relationship to that within your own community and how your community relates to like the practice of being a bruja.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, it's like a person to person situation of like what people think or believe about things. But a lot of the times, brujeria, witchcraft can be something that is seen as like a very like, oh, that's bad. Like it's like almost like you say crystal and it's like this neutral, like, okay, like you're into that stuff. But the moment you like switch over to like witchcraft or anything signifying that, it can be like a little bit off putting to people. So even within like my own community, I would say a lot of people that I interact with within the Hispanic, Latin community are one way or the other, where it's like seen as either this very like, this could be evil, or like, I don't want anything to do with that, or a lot of these practices could be evil, or like understanding the other side of it, where it's like, a lot of this is just rooted in like energy that we just naturally have, or in simple like plant medicine that like grows outside. So I think it's like a very split lens that people are in. I do feel like now more than ever people are at least open to the idea of having the conversation of like what what is this? What does that mean? A lot of people are curious. Even at the store, like I have a lot of people that are like, I'm new to this and I'm just like wondering. And it's like that's the whole purpose, is to have conversations that like this isn't something just like scary, bad, evil. A lot of this is honestly just like rooted in energy and like understanding that like we all have power within us. And sometimes just like labels can be something that are helpful to kind of focusing the conversation to things. But a lot of people like dabble in a lot of things and like herbs and stuff, right? Where it's like they don't consider themselves like a witch, but it's like they're stirring things up in their kitchen with intention. And it's like, well, you could choose to have these labels or not. So I would say that like it's the same as like any community where people are just like one side or the other. But I do see like a transition of people being a lot more open to the conversation of like wondering what things are. And a lot of times when things are like broken down a little bit more, people get a little bit of a better understanding, especially when it comes to like symbolism of things. So we have like evil eye things a lot that you'll see. And it's like a lot of times if people don't have the knowledge of what that is, it's seen as like, well, it's called an evil eye. So it seems like it would be something bad, which I totally get. But it's not. So a lot of it is just conversation. But yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. One more question related to this, because I know you even brought up in your own family, right? Like talking about, I feel like there's almost like a conscious relationship to magic, right? Like they're like we're consciously aware, we're intentionally relating. And then, like you said, there's a lot of people who are doing this, but like it's not like the intention of or recognizing or even naming what they're doing is magic or witchcraft. So you mentioned your dad. Would you be willing, maybe like your dad in Limpias and just, yeah, how it was kind of in your like childhood or your relationship with your dad, but maybe not in that conscious, intentional way?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up getting limpias from my dad, egg cleansings. They are spiritual cleansings that remove negative energy, sickness, a lot of things. So anytime I was like sick as a kid, he would like get this like cologne and an egg and take us to the bathroom and do all this thing. And like as a kid, it made no sense to me. I'm like, this is so weird. I don't know why you're rubbing an egg on me. And it's like to him, it was just something that like he was taught and like didn't, he wasn't like, we're going to do this spell or anything. Like to him, it's just like, this is like a normal thing and passed it on. And it's like very silly having this understanding of it now. And like being someone who professionally performs these for people. And like, this is my job to do these things now. So my dad has come a very long way with a lot of things. I'm very grateful. Shout out to my dad for just being an amazing human being. He raised my sister and I basically alone for most of our life. And so he has taken on that role of being our only parent. And he has always been very okay with all my weirdness. Like I've always just been like the weird kid, the weird into, oh, you're into all this stuff. Even when I came out as a lesbian to him, like he had a super amazing response to it. And so having these conversations with him is definitely like a lot different, more different than like a lot of other people would have with other Mexican father figures in their life, especially because machismo is something that's like very prominent in Mexican culture of like being like, it has to be this way and like traditional values and like do the right thing and blah, blah, blah. But he has never seen any of his gifts as something that is magic related. He has always seen these as like a cultural thing, a cultural tradition. He definitely believes in like energy to a certain degree, but I think that's almost like it wasn't a conversation that he had growing up where like it was almost like a feeling. The word feeling was something that was more used instead of like energy or magic or anything like that. So he's known about my business since we started. He asked a lot of questions. He's come to see me at pop-ups. He's supported me in every single way that he can. But definitely like always has like it's just been like okay, like you do stuff in that realm, like you read cards and you do those things, and he definitely understands it's very like botanica adjacent, and so he is fairly cool about everything. I would say we have like a couple of uncomfortable conversations where he does get a little bit weird about like Santa Muerte related stuff, and that's like also like one of those things where a lot of people just like assume she is bad news, assume that she is a deity, as a patron for only negative things. And so we've come to really have a lot of conversations to kind of get him to understand that like there's a bunch of different sides to everything. And most recently my stepmom and him have had given me a call because they had something kind of like weird happening at my stepmom owns an amazing Mexican restaurant, and they had some just like weird stuff happening there, weird feelings and stuff. And I feel like it was like a very roundabout conversation to basically ask me to come cleanse this space. And I was just like baffled. And I'm like, it only took you 6 years to acknowledge that this is a job that I do. So it's been very like silly navigating this with him. And I'm just grateful that he's like always been kind and is like, has understood that like these are the things that I'm into. But it is very interesting because it's like a lot of these gifts I have are from him. Like him giving me calls when he has certain dreams or when he feels something. Those are gifts that he has that he just like doesn't choose to like, I guess like acknowledge as more than anything that's just like a part of him.
Can I kind of want to pull on this a little bit because, you talked in the very beginning about how your practice as a bruja is like directly linked to folk magic, like the community that you're from, and the culture that you're from. And it seems like you also mentioned healing. So it seems like there's a thread here of it being something that everybody has access to, and like within the cultural context, obviously, which we'll get into. We have more questions about that specifically later, but within the cultural context, you're talking about your dad, like he has access to this magic as well. He just calls it something different. So I'm just curious. I know you mentioned accessible spirituality. Like, can you talk a little bit about that and kind of how that interweaves with this?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of my practice is focused on like making it modernized and accessible. And what I mean by that is like we don't need anything in order to tap into things or in order to perform spells or do magic or anything. Like, technically, we just need ourselves. Our tools and other things, nice to use, absolutely, but they are like a luxury and an extra thing. So, for example, like, even just when with egg cleansings, like you're using eggs, which granted, and up until this last year were very accessible, right? Like all of a sudden that's very different this year, but they were something that was always around. So using things like that as tools, as vessels to be part of a ritual, part of a something to access during anything that you want to use it for, energy speaking. And also just like being able to understand that, like, you don't need the right things. There is no right things. It's using what's around you. It's using what you have. It's exploring things that you have within reach, within your home, even, or even your land, or anything like that. So we'll go back to like evil eye things. Like, those are something that were always around me, whether it was like at botanicas, at the grocery store, at like Mexican grocery stores. Like, you see little tiny trinkets being sold like that all the time, just like little things that are easy for people to use as a form of protection. That's also part of like culture. And we could even look into like, the Catholic religion. Like, that's a huge prominent religion within Mexican culture. There's so many symbolisms, beyond that. Like, visiting Mexico, it's like they're selling all kinds of little bottles of holy water at every little corner around any sort of like church or place like that. And so it's just using those kinds of things as a form of a tool within your practice in whatever way you want. So, I mean, when it comes to anything that's like religious, like, I am not Catholic and I don't use them in a religious sense, but like I connect to those symbolisms and those things culturally because they were around me when I was a kid. So it's like I love, we went to Mexico and I visited the churches, and it's like I still honor those things as a part of my culture. And not necessarily as like a thing of like worship. And so I think that's something like accessible in that way, but also like using it like beyond culture. It's also like connecting to the land and things that we have around here, and not feeling like you need to go hunt down we'll just say like black 7-day candles are like so hard to find sometimes, like, and it's hard, and I don't always like have them in stock either. So just things like that where it's just like, okay, we don't have this, so we could use this thing that we found here in replace of.
Well, and it's interesting because you mentioned in the when we asked you about what lights you up, you mentioned healing as a part of it, and community and healing. So it seems like the accessible spirituality in a practical sense is really important because everybody, like, around you, you want everybody around you in your community to access that inner magic. Magic is healing, right? So can you tell us a little bit more about how healing kind of weaves into your practice and what that means for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in my opinion, healing just means like doing things to be able to step forward. And a lot of those things are based on like conversations and based on everybody acknowledging that like you have your own inner things to work through, and things that like you've probably just like put away to deal with that you like don't even recognize are there. So a lot of the times when I'm doing any of these conversations, sessions, offerings, whatever, it is like started with the understanding of like we all have things that we've been through, and these things are stored in our bodies in different ways, and the things that we've been through have also adjusted the way that we react to things. And so everything that I do, whether it's readings or energy work or things that I'm making to help you on your journey, are all just layers to things that you need to be doing within yourself. So understanding that healing is something that like you can do in many different ways, using different things, different methods, different people, and then like understanding that it's also something that you can't just do overnight. Like, it's not like a cool, I took this class, I'm healed now, but that it's something that you're like baby stepping towards always working on. It's almost just like a daily, like, healing should be part of like your habits. Like, it's one of those things. It's not like there's no end, land, as much as we would all love that to be the case. There's always things that we're going to be working on because we're human, and our reactions and our thoughts and our feelings change even day to day. You might feel okay, really great about something today, and then tomorrow you'll feel completely different about it. So to me, healing is also something that it's like you acknowledge that this is something that you have to do yourself, and connecting to magic, divine energy. To me, a lot of these things are all within like the same scope, just different like verbiage that we're using is all something that we're able to do ourselves. It's just by like acknowledging the things that we've been through, holding space for them, holding space for ourselves, and doing things to be able to honor those feelings, those energies that we have within our bodies, and then doing little baby steps to move forward.
Love that. I wrote down what you said about healing should be a part of your habits. Framing healing as this day-to-day sort of thing is really magical and potent for me. And I think you're so right that I think a lot of people frame it as this like exceptional experience that they have maybe a handful of times. I mean, you very much are a space holder. Like you have a physical space in Milwaukee and you also have what the Hex Market. I'm curious to hear more about how, like, what sort of in your magical journey kind of inspired you or led you to have like a very physical presence in Milwaukee?
Oh, that's a good question. So the basis of everything that I do, along with being like modernized and accessible, is like the other thing that I love to highlight is like no bullshit spirituality and magic. I think a lot of the times things are presented as an aesthetic, as in this is the way that you should do it, and this is the only way, and these are the things that you need. And also attached to that is like also a very like capitalistic tie to that, where it's like, and then therefore you should buy this thing, buy this class, and then you need all these ingredients or these whatevers. So that's basically everything that I wanted to get away from, is always teaching people that like when it comes to spirituality, magic, there are no rules per se. They're the only rules in my mind are we are not hurting ourselves or anybody, and we are not appropriating. Those are the only things that you have to worry about. You're not doing those two things, you're solid. You want to stare at a blank wall for 2 minutes and call that you're meditating, you're right. Like it's whatever it is to you. There's no wrong way to do anything. And so that is my biggest reason why I was inspired to do these things, to hold these spaces and to help connect other people to hold their own spaces as well, is because I didn't experience a lot of this. While I don't spend a lot of time talking like about negative anything that I see or experience, that's definitely like a huge part of my journey, was like having people make me feel like I had to do things a certain way, or having people make me feel like I wasn't educated enough in something to be able to do my own spaces or hold my own circles or whatever. Like pieces of paper that give you certifications or whatever are just pieces of paper. If education is something that like makes you feel better, then you should do it. I'm always reading, I'm always learning, I'm always trying to take other people's classes. I always want to know more because I don't know everything and I never will. And I am not better than anybody and nobody's better than me. We're all equal. We're all here to teach what we know and exchange things. And so that was like another huge factor of being where I am now, is also that like I don't like when spiritual world people put themselves on pedestals. Like we're not here to worship other people or to feel like this person is like above everybody, so we have to do things that way. Like no, like community connections are where it's at and putting us on the same level. And if I don't know something, then I'm going to ask you. And if I don't know something, I'm also going to not lie to you about it and tell you, let's figure it out together. So those are all huge reasons as to why I enjoy holding these kinds of spaces. Also, like making sure that like it's an inclusive space, that people are feeling safe, like all kinds of people, whether it's like a gender identity thing, a size thing, a person of color thing, like whatever it is, like I want you to feel safe enough with me to talk about whatever it is that you're struggling, whether it's like, you know, trying to find different answers about like your specific ancestral lineage, or whether you're trying to find a way to honor your whatever gender journey within your spirituality, like whatever it is. I love having those conversations because, again, if I don't know the answer, we can find it together. And so that is probably my biggest reason of like holding space and doing these kinds of things, is like I want everyone to be able to have the people and the resources and the tools that they need in order to help them on their own individual journeys. And it doesn't have to be with me, it could be somebody else that you meet within the space, but just being able to have these moments, I think really helps in people's healing dynamics.
Absolutely. I love the framing of the inclusivity that you are adamant about creating in your space. And also within that, the sort of specificity that you are referring to and that you've been talking about throughout this interview of like, we all come from a specific lineage or ancestry or traditions. And it seems like what your work is doing is to help people connect to that, even if that looks different from yours. And that's so refreshing to hear because I think in a lot of new age witchy spaces, it's almost like we're trying to reconcile with so much erasure, so much like fractured lineages that it kind of comes to be like a be all end all. And it's like, that's not really how it is. You know, not everybody has access to every single practice ever. And so I want to touch more on something you mentioned about like appropriation. What, like, you're vocal in educating about that. And how does that show up in the lens of spirituality? And how do you address that when you do see it in community?
Love that question. Again, a huge part of that answer too is also just like having conversations. I part of like being a safe space is like I want you to feel safe enough if you have a question, if you're wondering, is this good, is this bad, is this okay, to come ask me, and if I don't know the answer, we can figure it out together. But when it comes to anything, if you're curious whether it's okay, if you should be doing it, just research it to whether that's online, whether that's asking somebody who is part of that culture, whether it's going to some sort of spiritual, magical, anything, space and asking if anybody has resources there. That's all it takes. It's just asking. And then it's like, well, if you feel weird about it, that should be a sign to your body that like, maybe I shouldn't be doing this thing if I like feel like this is kind of weird or wrong. There is a couple of different like aspects to this. I think one is like, perhaps sometimes people don't know, like they truly don't know that something is wrong. And so I feel like there are appropriate ways of being able to like open that conversation up with people, just being like, hey, I didn't know if you knew, but like this is actually a closed practice and like this is an alternative you can use, for example. Or a lot of the times I also think it's also there's like a sense of entitlement to that, right? Where like people just feel like maybe like, well, I should be able to do anything. This is a plant. This is sold in the store. This is whatever. But a huge part of anything within the witchcraft, magical, spiritual space is also like making sure that you are taking on the responsibility to educate yourself and to research further. So if you're doing things, I always say like research from two different places. Like, and it's like we say research and it's like half the time it's like you're Googling something, which is cool. But like if you're finding one article here, just like find one more article to just make sure that you have two perspectives. If you read one book here, just make sure you get one more something. Because I think a lot of the times too, people will go to like, a witchy metaphysical store or whatever, find a book and be like, this is the way the book is telling me to do it. So I'm going to find this, and this is the way it has to be. And it's like, no, like it's just there to like, you can do it that way, but it's also like there's a million other ways of doing stuff. So I think the biggest thing is like, there's good ways of being respectful in these conversations, but I think especially in 2025, respect is going out the window to some degree, and people just do need to be called out sometimes. And just especially if they are being told and have been told over and over again that something is wrong, and then you're not seeing a change about it, then like as somebody within the spiritual space, and it's just say something about it. And it's like it's good to warn people about things that you see too, or just be like, this, just so you know, I don't think that this was ethically sourced, or like, just, like I would just be curious as to where this came from. And that's always something that I love when people ask me, where did you get these crystals from? Where is this sage from? How did you make this? Especially when it comes to like bones, like all the bones that I have are either found by me or given to me by people who found them, or like who have hunted them and have used all of the meat and stuff for their, families or for survival. And so people should never be afraid to answer something. I think that that gives you like a big, big general vibe there. If people shouldn't feel like, why are you asking me that question? Like you should be able to ask anything when it comes to anything that you're using within your craft.
It's so, it's honestly really beautiful the way that you kind of have this, you are helping people to get to their authentic, like, connection to spirituality, to the divine, to magic, to their authentic magic. And it really is healing, not just of the body and the individual, but it's also healing of our communities because of colonialism and capitalism. You know, all of us, every single one of us has been torn from our accessibility to our folk magic, to our ancestry, to our lineages. And to have somebody both holding both to be like, yep, like I'm here and you can ask me the hard questions that you might be uncomfortable to ask. And I'm going to also give you the truth of that thing. So I just wanted to name that like, I think that is, you know, I consider witches, brujas, I consider witches to be weavers a lot of times. And that it's like kind of reweaving some really beautiful threads. So thank you for your work in that. I just wanted to name that.
Appreciate that. That's so nice of you to say. That's very kind of you. I super appreciate that. That's very nice to hear because I think naturally, and I understand this is like just like a lot of like society pressures going in my brain too. I think that I sometimes struggle with like feeling too bitchy when it comes to things like this because people are really used to like readings being very like, this is all good, and like everything being revolved around love and light. And I'm like, that's cool, but also there's a whole other aspect to everything that we do. And so thank you for saying that because sometimes I'm like, I just feel like I'm the mean one.
Well, I can't wait to get into your chart because you got that Aries moon and that Scorpio rising, and it's going to be so fun to talk about that. But like, I don't think anybody's doing anybody any favors by being mean. Okay, so like let's start there. Like I don't think it's appropriate to be mean, but being truthful and being accountable is very different from being mean. And not holding people accountable and not being honest doesn't do anybody any favors anyways. Like if people really want to get access to like healing magic, like is important that we are honest and that we tell the truth in a way that feels as safe for our nervous systems as possible.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing, Danny. I'm just I can't wait till we share B's chart because B, so much of your approach is like very much like you live out your chart, right? Like we all have birth charts, we all kind of live out these cosmic configurations. And yeah, being a Scorpio rising, I think is like being someone who's like, we're gonna confront like the real, like just be so real about like not everything is love and light. And that like sometimes to get to a place of building more capacity for love in our lives, we have to go into the depths of the scorpionic psychological, emotional wounds and traumas and do that really deep healing work and transmute it and alchemize it. Scorpio is such to me like an alchemization. It's a sign of alchemy. And then the next sign after that is Sagittarius. And that's like when you find the meaning from it and you're like, oh, wow, like I have transformed. It's meaningful to me. And you have Scorpio and Sagittarius placements. So we'll get into that in a little bit, but it is truly like a blessing to be in community with you and like to have someone who's very real. And also being like a woman of color, a queer person, like to be named as a bitch, like that's just that's just fucking misogyny. Like, fuck that.
True,
I
so true.
so I would say like reclaim it. And I really like there's an oracle deck out there that's witch and it's the acronym and it's woman in total control of herself. So kind of like witch, bitch, like, yeah, I'm powerful and I speak my truth. And I might be confronting because we do need to confront things in this life if we want to grow and change our collective experience. So, B, I would love if we could now talk about some of your like projects, right? Like we've been talking about you, your practice, your offerings, but there's like two very specific containers that you really show up in Milwaukee and beyond. So can you tell us about Tres Ojos, your business, and like maybe beginning like when and why did you start Tres Ojos? And what is Tres Ojos?
Yeah, absolutely. So Tres Ojos translates into three eyes, which has a lot to do with like our third eye, which is just really has to do with just like seeing things from a different perspective. And then I also like to weave the symbolism of the evil eye in there too. A lot of things that I do are like teaching people about protection, and a lot of the workings that I do are protection based as well. So my wife and I started this business not too long after we started dating. So 6 years ago, we started the business pretty early at the same time as we kind of were starting our sobriety journey. So we both had issues with substance and alcohol abuse, and both are very vocal about the multitude of mental health illnesses that we both have. And so I don't know, we kind of just like came into a conversation of like understanding that the lifestyle that we were living, working at bars and pretty much just being in this like very party lifestyle was not something that was going to be a good long term. We weren't going to stay alive if we kept living the way that we were. And so I have always dabbled in like spiritual things even since I was like younger, but didn't really understand that this is something that like helps body, mind, and soul until I connected it to sobriety. And so my wife got on her sobriety journey, and then a few months after that, I joined her. And as that was happening, we really poured ourselves into this business, and we have dabbled with a lot of things and a lot of dynamics, starting the business together, really experimenting with the different artistic things like that. And after that, kind of dabbling more into like the witchier things. So like spell boxes, altar boxes, and like different kinds of like readings and spell jars and trying different things in that way. And then kind of changed the dynamic of our business when we decided to have kids. And so then she got pregnant and I kind of was doing the business a little bit more. And then she's been at home with our kids. And then now she owns her own lawn business and also works at a hydroponic farm. And so she kind of does that and then like helps me with all the back end stuff, pretty much all the moving things around and like carrying heavy stuff whenever I need her to. And so I'm very grateful that we've been able to shift our dynamic so as nice as we have. But basically all of that to lead us into having a physical storefront now in West Milwaukee, which was ultimately the dream to have some sort of physical location. I love pop-ups so much and being out in the community and doing things. I'm just very grateful to not do like 3 to 4 things a weekend now and to be able to mostly be here at the store and to hold space here and then to be able to be very intentional about the things that I am doing pop-up wise in the community. And so yeah, we do a lot of things here. I co-own the space with my best friend Cece, who is the owner of B Barrales Studio, and she is amazing. And her business is very more art rooted, and so we share the storefront here. And so you'll find usually one of us. It's always going to be one of us that are here, and we do different kinds of offerings, whether it's like one-on-one workings or group things. And then 90% of the store is filled with all things that we hand make. So we're not filled to the brim here. We can only work as fast as, 2 people can in making things. Everything that I make is very small, intentional batches too. And then anything that we're not making is very intentionally sourced. So I'm telling you where it's from, how I got it, and high quality things. So we call ourselves metaphysical art gallery. So you can find a lot of things that we've crafted here that are all intentional, all magic based, and all things that you can use somehow within your practice.
Thank you for sharing. Yes, it is a beautiful space. I also shout out Des, B's wife, and shout out Cece. Yeah, Cece is amazing. Business partner, your creative partner, your co-owner. And it's been really amazing to see you and Cece grow in your creative and your professional partnership. It's like such a dynamic duo, and you both have, I also like have read both of their charts. So they have this lovely Capricorn Cancer opposition that I think works so well in your partnership. So all of our listeners, if you have not been to their storefront, you have to go. We will share the address in the show notes, but it is gorgeous and it is definitely the place to go for any spiritual needs you have. And then you and Cece, B and Cece, which I also love the combination of your names. It just feels like two meant to be. The other amazing container and that you two have together that you've created together is called What the Hex, which is the inclusive witches market. Will you tell us more about What the Hex? Similar kind of questioning. How did it start? What was the vision and what continues to drive that?
Yeah. So Cece and I met at vending events, so at a witch market. And so that is how we became friends. And throughout that, we vended at, things that were both would be vending at things together separately. And then we kind of decided like to start our own space because we saw a great need for like gathering anybody within the spiritual and witch community around our area with a different lens of making sure that we are inclusive and prioritizing any of our applicants who are LGBTQ or BIPOC and making sure that we are highlighting those people in our community because frankly, they don't get prioritized anywhere else. And so it's the very least that we could be doing. We love hosting these markets. So we do them seasonally for the most part. And we theme them to different things. And then we have different spiritual vendors that we all vouch for on our application. Like right at the top, it's like we don't fuck with appropriation. If anybody is offended by that, then they shouldn't be applying to our market. Everything is vouched for. We have a right to ask, where are you getting your stuff from? How are you making this? And then especially anybody who's offering any sort of like services, we want to make sure that we like know you have either experienced it or can make sure that we are verifying that like the way that you're going about things is something that would mesh well with our community. So we do that at Dresden Castle, which is a beautiful space in Cudahy. And it's an amazing establishment if you haven't been. It's stunning. And the owner of there is also really amazing to work with. A lot of things like happened very like magically. Like Jason is a queer owner and he has been wonderful to work with. And just so like somebody who sees our vision and who respects what we do and it's really hard to find spaces to hold things in and like a large volume of people because they want to charge you wedding prices that people don't have. And so I super appreciate him caring about what we do and also just like sharing it to the community out there because I know it's like sometimes promoting a witch market is something that's like a little bit hit or miss with people. And so yeah, that's what we do. We have vendors and we do like free offerings, free workshops that we usually have at them whenever it works out with like the theme or with the timing of things. We try to have some sort of drag performances or we've had different kinds of other performances to highlight different people in our community as well.
I love it. And you started adding like resource tables too, right?
Yeah, yeah. So that is something that now we're kind of like focusing on like getting that bigger is a lot of times people need like people that they vouch for just like in every area, whether it's like a hairdresser that's queer friendly or a therapist that's cool with this kind of stuff. And so we are offering resource tables whenever we can. We invite like either organizations that we know that can kind of fit in with the theme of things or having just like things at a table, like free rights cards for people to hand out, especially now, and so that we can all be educated on how to deal with these events that are sort of happening around us. And so anything that we can do to be helpful, we try to incorporate into the market somehow and always open it to the community of like, if you have something that you have that's coming up that would be helpful to people, but we would love to also showcase that. So we invite anybody to like bring business cards or flyers for their stuff too.
Love that. I want to ask one more follow-up question before we get to your birth chart, but I feel like community is so centric to everything that you do. Like you are such a collaborator. And I know when I first met you, one of the first things you told me about doing markets is that you always are aware of like when you're doing these pop-ups, like who is being friendly and welcoming and inviting and collaborative and who is maybe being a little bit more in that competitive energy, which is like, again, that's a conditioning of capitalism. So I don't want to fault individual people who are in that. Like that is a conditioning. But I'm curious, right? Like community work is messy work, right? Again, it's not all love and light, just like life is not all love and light. But to me, it's always worth it. So I'm curious, like, Has there been anything that you've learned, like doing all this amazing work, like collaborating with Cece, opening a storefront with, someone else, and now co-hosting this What the Hex Market, which is obviously a huge event with so many different people involved. What have you learned about collaboration and just co-creating with others through this?
That's a great question. I think the biggest thing that comes to mind is like remembering that like if it's meant to work out, it will. I think a lot of the times things happen where it like rubs you the wrong way or you like take it personally and it's not that. Like you said, it's like a social conditioning of people. And so this natural competitiveness or this natural, I need to make more than you, I need to be better than you is like a natural feeling that we get from these societal pressures. However, it's something that we can like push past to get to the real value of what these interactions should be about, which is like making genuine connections. And so anywhere that we go, that's like, it happens all the time. Like if I'm selling, I sell jewelry and candles are like mostly what people will see and be like, oh, that's like what you do. And so if I happen to be next to somebody at an event who happens to sell one of those things, it's like a 50-50 shot whether they feel like it's weird or not. But at the end of the day, there's room for everybody. And the people that I want around me are people who feel that way too. It's very silly to me when people get mad about like, oh, there's another shop opening. Oh, there's another person doing tarot readings. It's like, we need more people within the spiritual and healing communities to do things. Like everybody should be accessing the things that we already have within us and like finding the way that makes you happy of how to express those gifts. So it is interesting because it's like, I think that we've personally gone through things where we've tried to collaborate with people even doing similar things than us and it's completely backfired on us. There will always be ups and downs to it where like for every negative interaction either together we've had or personally that I've had, like there's 10-20 other great interactions to counter that of like, I'm so glad I met these people or I'm so glad these two people connected. And so it's always going to be something that's a little bit tricky. It's always going to have those up and down moments, but ultimately like finding the people that mesh well in your life or in your community is something that's going to naturally fall into place. And those things will also always ebb and flow. You don't need to, it's kind of like a friendship, right? Like you don't need to talk to somebody every single day in order to be good friends. Like there could be people that you connect with that you're like, cool, they are now in my realm of people that I consider community. And one of the big things that we like always try to focus on is like understanding that like community is magic. Like this competition energy is like something that we want to really eliminate. And like even within Hex, like, yeah, we try not to put like two crystal people next to each other out of courtesy, but like multiple people are going to have similar things within the niche of witch and spiritual. And so it's understanding that everybody does things differently and that there's room for everybody to do things in their own way.
Community is magic. May it be so.
Such a weaver. I'm going back to that. You really are such a weaver. I love it. It's so beautiful.
All right. Shall we move into B's birth chart? Danny or Aryn, would you like to describe what you are seeing to folks who may be listening or who are very new to chart reading?
Do it. So the first thing that I would look at is the sun, moon, and rising sign. So B's sun is at 1 degree of Capricorn, and her moon, where's the moon? Over here in Aries at 28 degrees of Aries. And then the rising sign or ascendant is at 6 degrees of Scorpio. And the other thing I would look at is where is the ruler of the rising sign. So the ruler of the rising sign, Scorpio, is the rising sign. So the planet that rules Scorpio is Mars. So I'm looking for Mars. And Mars is like almost exactly conjunct 1 degree difference to the sun in Capricorn. So some really strong Martian energy in this chart. Like this chart is for sure a Mars ruled chart. And so I'm going to look at it from that lens. You know, you've got both Pluto in your first house and Jupiter in your first house in Scorpio. So you've got your Pluto and Jupiter with the rising sign in Scorpio. Scorpio is ruled by Mars. And then also this moon in Aries is also ruled by Mars. So some really strong Martian energy. And Mars in Capricorn happens to be exalted. It loves being in Capricorn. It is a doer, somebody that can is very capable of building something, and has the energy and the drive to do that. And also because you're a Scorpio rising, because Pluto's in the first house, and also because Jupiter's there, there's like a drive to do it, but do it truthfully, authentically, like holding people, like people with Pluto in the first house, they tend to reflect the truth back to people. They tend to be people that can kind of activate people. And that can be a really healing thing when channeled appropriately. It can also be off-putting for some people. Some people can be scared of it because, again, Pluto is the god of death, the god of the underworld, but also the god of wealth. So there's something about the exposing and digging down and getting to the truth of a thing as that being the source of power and magic. So it's a really powerful placement. Pluto in the first house is like, this is like who you are as a person, who you're presenting to the world is somebody who can kind of get to the truth of a thing, can see through. Like I always say that Scorpio like placements and Pluto placements, they are able to like, they know when people are lying, you know, they know when things don't feel authentic. It's like a physical experience, and other people, because it's your first house, this is who you're presenting to the world. Other people often see in you their own, like, what's underneath. And sometimes that's extremely powerful. Sometimes that's stuff that is really hard to look at. But, you know, how you were talking about how you address some of these things. So, for example, cultural appropriation, when people are really activated by that, you are somebody, you've got this Mars in Capricorn ruling all this Scorpio stuff. And that Mars in Capricorn is going to be like more methodical, more like down to earth, a little bit more like to the point. They're going to also be able to hold hard things. I think Capricorn and Scorpio both have this like ability to hold a hard situation and be able to move through it. I'm going to pause because I'm sure Emily and Aryn have stuff to say, but I love your chart. It's really cool.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in with the Pluto here and just point out. So one, like being of the Pluto and Scorpio generation, we've talked a lot about that because Danny, Aryn, and I are also of the Pluto and Scorpio generation, and a lot of the people we've interviewed are as well. But your Pluto in particular is in a direct square to your Saturn in Aquarius here in the fourth house. And so I was really thinking about one of the things I think about us as the Pluto and Scorpio generation. We are really grappling with like the like what has been passed down to us through our lineages, right? Like that through epigenetics. Like I feel like epigenetics is very recent to even have the language of that, of being like trauma is passed down through our DNA and through our bodies. And then like Scorpio being a water sign, it's like we are grappling as a generation of feeling that trauma within our bodies, and then really being this generation that is like really activating and doing this really profound healing work, which you are doing through the lens of magic and spirituality, and also your journey with sobriety, which I also resonate with as someone on that journey myself. And B was such a supportive person. B was such an, like, really was one of the most influential people, especially in the beginning stages of my sobriety journey. It was just so nice to be in community with her openly talk about her journey with me, and like that really inspired some really deep healing in myself and really encouraged me to commit to sobriety. And like B was such an influential part of that, and even held this sobriety healing circle right when I needed it. And it was just like, so just that level of impact that you have, maybe even without fully realizing it. And I think some of those things speak to Pluto and Scorpio, because I know you're very open about your sobriety journey. And I know for me, like, alcohol, drugs. I turned to that because I didn't have the tools to grapple with all of this Pluto and Scorpio wounding that had been passed down to me. And with this square to Saturn in the fourth house, it's also like this is rooted in lineage. And that's really where that ancestral wounding comes from. But also, you're really reclaiming your ancestral cultural traditions, your magical, your folk magic, and you're like, yeah, it might be taboo. And yeah, it might have taken my dad 6 years to call me and do a cleansing and like acknowledge that that's actually what it is. But it's like in that there's like some ancestral healing. So I feel like you really are just such an arbiter as an individual. Like in the community, the force that you have is like you're really having these beautiful, and again, Jupiter on the freaking ascendant. Jupiter in Scorpio, that is like really beautiful, transformational, depthful healing. So it's like you're doing that intense Mars scorpionic work, but then you have Jupiter on the ascendant that like lightens it up and like buoys it a little bit. It's like we're going in the trenches together and we're going into the underworld, but we will come out on the other side. And I think that's just something that you really embody and practice and really kind of ripple out into community.
I was thinking of in your chart, where can we see these signatures or patterns that really reflect your community involvement? I think Danny and Emily both did a good job at like talking about the like space holder and in the hard space holder, like the space holder who will contend with like that Pluto square Saturn energy of like things are hard and things need to be talked about and addressed. And I was also so drawn by your third house. So where all that Capricorn is hanging out, the third house represents both like communication and sort of like, you know, when we have transits in the third house, it might like activate more of our mental networks and like our thinking and our writing, but it's also a house of our literal immediate neighborhoods and our immediate like communities. And so to have like the sun and Mars and you know Uranus and Neptune are also hanging out there in Capricorn, to me that just feels so much of like that there's like a drive, a motivation to not only be in space with others, but to initiate that, being that person who starts it and gets everybody in the room. And then what happens there, it's like people get the opportunity to like connect with others. That also speaks to the Jupiter on the ascendant. I feel like I've known a few Jupiter and ascendant people where they are the connector. They're like, oh, I know this person, you know this person. We're going to put you all together in a room. And so much magic comes from there. And then if we go to the 11th house, so Emily's going to like point it to over here, we have Chiron, which is an asteroid. And typically is, you know, the story of the wounded healer. I think it's so interesting that you as a community leader have a asteroid in the 11th house, which is all about like community, shared spaces. I would say like things like your market and your store, they feel like 11th and third house spaces because they're physical spaces that people go to collaborate, to commune, to come together. And so to me, like in Virgo, Chiron and Virgo, I feel like that like it's almost seems like you're aware of the wounding of what it means to not be in community. Like you're aware of like the negative consequences of what happens when people don't get those spaces. And so I don't know, all of that sort of weaving together is really interesting.
Well, and that Chiron placement, that's so good, Aryn, because that Chiron placement too, and I was talking earlier, I had said during the interview portion how you kind of are like reweaving some threads of humanity that like have been destroyed due to colonialism and stuff. And Chiron, the wounded healer. Like that's literally what they do. They look, and also your approach to healing is also very chironic because Chiron always has a wound. Like Chiron doesn't heal by getting rid of a wound and just suddenly is healed, you know? Chiron is wounded, and you know, the story is that he's wounded in his leg and he by his own arrow, and he can't heal it. Like it will never be fixed. So he has to learn how to tend to it and care for it and transform it essentially. And so that's kind of the chironic energy there in your 11th house of community in Virgo, which is very service oriented and also has a deep connection to the divine and to like, you know, spirituality and stuff. So, you know, I think that's part of where this weaver energy comes in. Cause like Aryn said, like, you know what it's like to have the wound of not being connected or having, you know, having that disconnect between magic, like practicing magic and like knowing what it is and being conscious about it, you know? So you bringing that into other people's lives is also really healing, but it comes from a place, a personal place.
I feel like we have to talk about the Sag placements too, because there is such strong Martian signatures. And then you have Venus and Mercury conjoined in Sagittarius, which one, I think this almost also brings your daughters up for me. B has twin daughters who are both Sagittarius. And so then you have this cute little Venus and Mercury conjoined. And so I'm almost thinking about how these placements in your chart might even like manifest as your twin daughters who are Sagittarius. And
That's so cute.
yeah, I know. It's just like, oh, that's adorable. They weren't born yet the first time I read your chart. So super cute. But Mercury and Venus together, like, I really think of Mercury and Venus almost as like a sibling relationship in a way. And like they're like a dynamic duo. They're really merging and blending their forces together. So it's this like Mercury is the magic of communication. Like I'm really thinking of like spell casting, especially almost Mercury and Sagittarius. I'm like gives me like preacher energy of like, you know, is giving the word of whatever that person's gospel is, the gospel of Brujeria for you, right? And the gospel of community healing and, you know, magical spaces for community healing, all that stuff. And then Venus is the artist, right? So it's like the preacher and the artist come together and it's like your art is rooted in spirituality, right? Like you make spells, you make potions, you make amazing jewelry with beautiful magical intentions, you make incredible bone art, you do so and so much more beyond those physical creations too. So it's like these two are really powerful and potent, I think, and they're ruled by your Jupiter and Scorpio. So there's a lot of depth to like, so to me, it's like what you talk about, what you communicate, the messages that you share, and what you create artistically and creatively is like really depthful and really meaningful and really rooted in like the meaning of like the deep work of healing and connecting to something larger than ourselves.
Also, the North Node is in Sag too. It's not conjunct that Venus Mercury thing, but there's an element of like, this is part of why you're here is to, for some of this stuff to be made manifest and for you to kind of learn how to integrate that side of you into your own being. And yeah, like Emily said, with the Jupiter ruling it, because Jupiter rules Sagittarius, Jupiter ruling it, but in Scorpio conjunct your ascendant, like there is that depth. So that's like, you're not afraid to go deep, obviously. And that's a really powerful thing.
And I wanted to add, and I forgot to say this, it's in the second house. Like, this is how you resource yourself. It's like you're resourcing yourself through your voice, through your art. And it's also, they're also in this lovely trine to your moon. So, like, really woven into, like, yeah, your intuition, how you feel, your body. Like, and the moon in the sixth house in Aries is like, really like devoted to rituals and routines and like you're also a really hard worker and have a lot of amazing projects that also require a lot of your labor and time and energy and work. So this moon in Aries having like this outlet of like all these creative projects, this market that you co-host, the physical storefront that you have, I think is a really good outlet for this Mars or this moon in Aries, which probably has a lot of energy that needs to be like expressed outwardly so it doesn't get stored in the body. And you have all these different creative, meaningful projects to channel that moon's, that energy that's coming in through the body into these artistic and meaningful expressions as like a way to resource yourself. Be anything coming up as we're
Yeah, I always love hearing like just like an astrology point of view to things and like how that connects to stuff. I think it's so cool. It's such a like foreign language to me. Like I'm like anything you guys say, I will believe you. Like anything like I'm like I love it. It's just like very cool how your brains work in the way that like it's just like a different form of divination. Like you're interpreting something and connecting it in whatever areas that it comes up for you. And I think it's just very cool to see. Like it's like, I know I'm familiar with like a little bit and stuff, but like it's also I'm like, oh, like other things it's like, that are new. It's like it's always so interesting to hear. So thank you so much for sharing. It's very cool. I love it. I love that y'all are so knowledgeable about these things. And it's just like very awesome to see like a different form of something that I'm not super familiar with, but like still have it like integrated into my life and how that shows up for me.
Thank you. Danny or Aryn, anything else to add?
Just that I love a powerful truth teller like chart with some like earthy balance. Like it's just a really, really lovely balance that you have. That Aries moon, that Scorpio rising, like Mars conjunct the sun in the third, like, thank you for telling the truth. It can be uncomfortable to be that Martian. I'm somebody who can be I have a lot of Martian in my energy, and it can be uncomfortable to be that person sometimes. So I just want to say thank you for being you and doing that.
Yeah, I really love that astrology can really show us like all of our unique gifts that we have, all of the unique roles that we have to serve in our community. And yeah, B is that powerful, no bullshit truth teller. I love the no bullshit spirituality. Great. So, Aryn or Danny, want to segue into wrapping us up?
So, B, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners or final messages that you would like to leave?
You guys love asking some deep stuff. Like it's not just like, what's your favorite color? It's like big here. I love it. It's very cool. Let's see. I mean, come check out our shop. I would love to see everyone. We always have like different offerings that we've got going on here, and also like check out What the Hex. Our next one is in August, and we've got them seasonally. And let me see. Final messages. I would say just continue to be yourself. I feel like naturally it's really easy to compare ourselves to other people, especially because we're in this age of like social media, right? To like compare ourselves and be like, oh, I should be more that way. And it's you can take inspiration from things, but ultimately like just go to what you truly gravitate towards and continue to be you because that's what you're meant to do.
Thank you, B. Where can our listeners connect with you and support your work?
Instagram, website, Facebook, all under Tres Ojos. I have everything on there. I'm sure you guys will have it posted somewhere too, but it's TR3S period OJOS. Our shop is in West Milwaukee, and that's all linked on all of my socials and stuff as well.
Thank you, B. I will put all those links in the show notes. So thank you so much for being just, the magical being that you are. Thank you for being down to be interviewed on the podcast and to go into the deep end with us. Appreciate that. So really hope our listeners enjoyed this one. And listeners, definitely be sure to share this. Share this with the people who need to receive a little bit of B's magic today. So thank you, everyone. Until next time. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Soul Connections. To support the show, please share this episode with a friend and give us a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts.
This podcast is an act of community co-creation with artwork designed by Bree Legan and original music written, produced, and performed by Sofia Mock, Queen Bonobo, Liv LaFluv, and Danielle Renee.
To connect with us or a guest, visit the links in the show notes. Until next time.